everyone, welcome back to Absolute Comics, a show where I get together with Sal on a weekly basis to discuss what is going on in the world of comic books. And this week, there isn't too much going on. So we thought it would be a great time to talk to Sean, you may know him as Sean Gordon Murphy, who wrote the entire White Knight universe for Batman, which you may or may not like, but we're going to talk about that a little bit right here. And we're going to talk about other stuff going on in the world of comics. And today's episode is brought to you by a Kickstarter by Sean Gordon Murphy. Shocker, right? He has a Kickstarter where he's bringing back Zorro. And we're going to talk a whole bunch about bringing back Zorro. And no, I don't mean Zorro from One Piece. I mean Zorro, the classic hero who's like the inception for Batman. He created Batman, basically. I know you're going to argue with me, but I don't care. Anyway, Zorro is the reason Batman exists. So
right.
The One Piece references because I'm doing all these One Piece things right now. And there's a character named Zorro in there. So
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like, oh, great. So I literally a video before this, I'm going to talk about One Piece Zorro. And now I have to talk about Masked Zorro. So let's just clarify which Zorro we're talking about.
Slightly different spelling. But yeah, I was watching the new Netflix One Piece the other day and I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. There's a Zorro there too with one R. And like, I wonder how they got away with that legally because he is a sword fighter and he's not in black or anything like that.
Yeah, well, so actually, he's in the manga. He's not Zorro. That was something they did in the anime because they figured out they could do it. He's actually Zolo. Z-O-L-O.
Interesting.
Is how they spell it in the actual. I don't know how it's pronounced because it's in the manga, and that's just it's Japanese pronunciation and all that kinds of stuff. But it's Z-O-L-O, right. And then when they brought it over, he's Zorro. So it was just an interesting decision because it threw me off because I'm reading it, not watching it. And so whenever I hear them call him Zorro, I'm like, no.
Is it the way that the Japanese pronounce L's? I won't do an impression because it's racist, but do you think maybe they were like, well, sound-wise, it's closer to an R, so let's just make it an R?
I think that's what it was. I think that's what the writer was going for. But if you look into the history, there's like 100 different versions of why it was Z-O-L-O instead of... They all have the same issue with one of the towns is Alabasta, same way, and it's like Arabasta. And it's funny because when I was learning to pronounce like the characters from the manga, I was talking to people, they were like, well, if you decide to go full weeb, you say it with a bad Japanese accent because that's how they're saying it. And I'm like, oh, I feel like we're just going to cause so many problems.
Yeah. Don't. Probably a wise move.
Yeah. So what we were talking about before we hit, because we have this tendency to bring on guests like Sean and then have a whole discussion and then go, man, that would have been great on the thing. I brought up Chip Zdarsky's Batman, which has made changes to the Batman lore and made changes to the way Batman acts. And we were discussing it, and you had brought up when changing a character, there's tenets you have to follow. Right. And you were saying that you were what were the tenets that you were trying to follow when making White Knight? Because you made a lot of changes in White Knight.
Yeah. Well, the one I accidentally screwed up was the Order of the Robins. I'll own that right now. But generally, I knew Batman had to be angry, gruff. He, as long as you nail the relationship he has with his sidekicks, you're good. In my book, we have Joker pointing out that Batman's causing a lot of collateral damage, which is really expensive. So I don't know. I just had I think killing Alfred was probably the riskiest thing I did in the first one. And I remember Tom King killed Alfred that same year and everybody freaked out. And I saw people on message boards saying, I wish that you had killed him the way Sean did. Sean did a much better job. Which is a compliment to me, but I also would say mine's Elseworld, so people are willing to go along with it. Like if I killed them in the main line, they would be just as mad at me as they were Tom.
That's right.
So I think I got away with a lot more because people were eased into the idea that this is a different universe and they're okay with playing with the toys in a different way. But generally, I wanted everything to read like Batman is still Batman. Even with Batman Beyond, Terry doesn't meet Batman the same way, but it feels the same. Terry's attitude is the same. The relationship's the same, So I think that's the trick to it. You just have to have a sense for what your readers will accept. And it can blow back in your face if you change too much.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you were telling us a story about how apparently Jim Shooter had like a list, like a Bible of like, if you can do a lot to Spider-Man unless it's these things. And it's like, Is that tempered by fire from fandom, or is that just kind of like an internal editorial thing, do you think?
Great question. Yeah, I'd love to know what Jim thinks. But yeah, there's like a 10 Commandments of Spider-Man, and it's not really Spider-Man unless he loses a loved one.
Right.
Yeah.
The same with the Batman. Like, you can't have his parents be alive. That really changes who he is.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, I'm trying to think about, is Zdarsky getting blowback for what he's doing with Batman?
Well, like, okay, so he is kind of, but I don't know how much he's getting in the mainstream. I'm toting that I love the current run that he's doing, and it's got changes. I'm not denying that. There are some tenets that you're like, what was the choice of this? And some of it's gone on a little bit longer than like the multiverse adventures. But overall, I'm enjoying it. But then you get like random people, the anonymous people online that are like, no, you're wrong. It's bad. Yeah. And it's like that kind of mentality. Oh, those characters are acting out of character, which is something I always argue about when people try to tell me this guy's acting out of character. I'm like, no, he's acting how you think he should be acting out of character.
Yeah.
Every writer has their own version of every character. It's a different story, but like you said, there's tenets they need to follow.
Yeah.
You know,
I saw a funny thing recently regarding like the Gotham War. I remember somebody took a panel or a page out of context and they threw it on Reddit, and I hadn't had a chance to actually read the issue yet, but I love spoilers, and when I say that, I don't mean that, but you know, but I was looking at it anyway. Regardless, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna read it, and Gotham War, meh. So I'm reading this page, and out of context, I was like, this sucks. Like, this just genuinely is terrible. Yeah. And then I went back and I read the issue, and I'm like, oh, well, in context,
yeah,
I actually kind of dug it. And when I say it, like, I it was certainly justified. Like, I wasn't necessarily on board what was happening with it, but I also was like, oh, well, it's funny when you remove context from any given situation, it suddenly makes that thing you're pointing out that much more like abhorrent. And it's like, like, and that's really what we're seeing with when it comes to like any number of books, but in particular Batman, because it's obviously the #1 book at DC. So it's like,
it's the same thing like Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man is the same.
People just grabbing pages, panels. And then they want to say, like, you know, and of course, who are the ones who are responding to that the most? Not people who are reading the book, because of course Batman and Spider-Man are the #1 books at their respective companies. Like, those are the top selling books. Although I did see that Predator Wolverine sold very well this month, so I'm very happy with that.
That's great. Yeah, I love taking big swings and seeing it pay off for companies. I like that stuff a lot.
Right? But it's always like the people who are not reading the book that have like the most to say about like some kind of big change in this character.
Well, yeah, the internet's more about people playing a game and trying to score points on dunking or reaching back into your tweets to find something that's not okay. And they're not actually customers. And I think there was a big distraction for a while because publishers have thought that a bunch of likes on Twitter meant sales. And that's just not true. You know, 90% of my readers go into the store. They don't follow me on social media, and that's fine. They see a new book that I did, or the retailer knows that they like my stuff. They go, great, I'll take it. And that's their interaction with me. And I don't mind that, actually. I don't think they need to be following me through all the dumb stuff I say online.
I mean, that's actually a great example, because all the way back at the beginning of, I won't go into who they are, but the problematic people on the internet for comic books, when they were starting, and there was a big argument about trying to, which side I was going to side with on either side of that argument. Yeah. And I came out with a statement and basically said, I don't care about your argument. The people watching Comic Storian are not following me on Twitter. Like, my Twitter following does not match 3 million people on YouTube, which means that those 3 million are not following me on Twitter.
Right.
Yeah. That means that they don't care about your argument or what you think is right or wrong or your out of context panel. They just want to see the next story of Batman, and where do they go buy the issue? That's all I care about.
that's why your customer base is really good, and they're generally positive and happy to be like, I feel like the interactions on YouTube are usually better than they are on Twitter. You know?
Yeah, we have great. I mean, YouTube does have some shitty audiences out there, but I think we've done a great job of cultivating good audiences. For me, I only promote or talk about things that I enjoy, which is actually one of my funny Twitter interactions this morning. I tweeted out, like, look, I know people are complaining about Gotham War, but the latest issue is awesome. I love what they did with Batman. I love how they handled the Red Hood situation. And somebody responded with, like, quote tweeted me, Gotham War is terrible. You're only promoting it because you need videos. And I just responded to him like, if you think that, then you, one, don't watch my channel, and two, have no idea how YouTube works.
Right. Yeah. Do you worry that responding to someone will mean your defenders will dogpile them?
No, because I don't have a lot of defenders on Twitter because
Okay.
I once I realized Twitter audience and YouTube audience are basically separate.
Yeah.
Instagram audience is separate. I'm classic YouTube. I've been around since 2012. I just stopped promoting all those side ancillary things. Like we promote our TikTok more than we promote anything else. But I never talk about us having a Twitter. I never talk about us having an Instagram because early days they were just those platforms were used to just promote YouTube.
Yeah.
And YouTube was doing well. So why do I need another additional promotional platform? Now there's separate audiences where they're just mean to each other. So I don't care.
Yeah, we actually recently just we pulled like if you watched old YouTube videos, you'd see like the person's name pop up and their Twitter handle come up. We over the past year just pulled all the YouTube handles. We were just, or Twitter handles. We were like, that's enough. That's enough cross promotion with that. We don't need them anymore. And all the better for it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the Twitter people, and you probably dealt with this, they'll go follow you on Twitter because they know that you're probably going to see it even if you don't respond. So you mostly get angry people who want to tell you you're wrong as opposed to getting interested people who want to have a good discourse or fun discussion.
Yeah, I think that's why comics get flooded with this. I think we're worse than it's harder for us than most industries because you can tweet or reach out to your favorite comic creator and they'll probably see it and maybe respond.
Yeah.
If you bitch to Tom Cruise, he's not going to see it. I mean, he's got 3 secretaries before you even get to him, you know? So if people want to like scrap and get into this culture war stuff, comics is like a fun playground because we as creators are very reactionary and we're obsessed with Twitter. Like I quit, I broke my habit to it, but I can see the addiction in a lot of creators. And yeah, it's just never ending soup of drama, it seems, but I understand why it happens.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, people love to yell out into the void and get some kind of a reaction, or they feel they need to defend themselves to random. I'm not like Sal can vouch, but like almost 2 years ago now, I swore off almost all social medias.
Yeah.
My team handles it at this point. Like I might check them once in a while if I'm bored.
Yeah.
But I don't have them installed on my main phone. So because that was the bad habit. It was like every free moment it's going on Twitter. Like it was such a bad habit to break.
Yeah. It's good that you're doing it. It's like, well, I was raised Catholic and now I'm not. And when I became not religious, I was just amazed the addiction that people had to some of this stuff. And I feel the same way. I feel like everyone in comics is addicted to cocaine and they don't see it. And they think it's weird that I'm not on cocaine and I'm judging them because I'm not on cocaine. Yeah.
It turns into people think Twitter has more of an effect than it does. And I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect. It does with the right audiences. Yeah. But I don't think comics is that audience because the people who read comics aren't on Twitter. They're reading the comic. The people who want to complain about comics are on Twitter. Right. That's what I've noticed.
That's fair. Yeah. And for everybody, I wanted to say this. I've met Benny behind the scenes many times and Sal as well. What you see is what you get. This is not a performance. This is just who they are. You're very genuine people, which I just wanted to point out.
Same here, man. No, it's always been a very like genuine back and forth. Anytime we've ever had an interaction, it's always like, oh, this is me. Like, well, thankfully you don't. I think that your approach to comics and the like need for like, okay, this is a tangent, but like let's go there anyway because this is the show. Stan Lee, right? Dude realized very early on, he's like, I gotta be a carnival barker. I've gotta be like the greatest showman. It's not just about selling comics or writing the best comics. It's about selling comics in the most showy, flashy, most like car salesman kind of way possible. No shade to Stan. I think that it worked. I mean, obviously he turned it into a brand that's almost separate from Marvel, where it's like Stan is a thing. Yeah. And I think that worked really well, but you could tell that like some people like Jack Kirby found that repugnant, had no interest in being like, no, I just want to draw. I just want to make comics. I don't want to do that. Yeah. And the nature of today is that like, and I think there's an expectation from publishers, especially the big two, that like if you're a creator, oh, well, great. Well, you're also going to have to work marketing. You're also going to have to be a Stan Lee. You're going to have to be a carnival barker. You're going to have to sell you can sell yourself. You're going to have to like, okay, you're a writer. You're an artist. Well, guess what? You're also a brand. Your name is a logo now, and you're going to have to sell it. And I think that artists haven't changed in 70 years. You know, it's like they're introverted people who want to create and make some beautiful things. And it's like they don't want to go up and go like, ladies and gentlemen, it's me. Like check out all my crap. You know, like so I could see how it doesn't really translate every single time to folks who are like, I have to turn into a personality. I got to be my own PR machine.
Yeah. I asked DC, you know, when we did that interview once, and they had a chaperone with me.
Yeah.
I asked them around that time, you guys have a lot of opinions on how people should conduct themselves. Like, you're expecting us to do marketing for free, and we don't hear anything unless we step out of line, and then you're mad at us. But you're not willing to give us any training. And I understand we're not employees, we're freelancers. But like, isn't there something DC could do to like give us bullet points on how to conduct ourselves? Like, and I ran up the ladder. No one ever got back to me. So it's like, okay, so there is no rule book. You just don't want to go there because it's a liability legally for you. It's really irritating. And, you know, people that spend a lot of time alone are not great at doing that stuff and are apt to make mistakes. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it is what it is, you know?
I mean, I've been arguing for years now that DC and Marvel, DC in particular, because they at least Marvel promotes like their movies.
Yeah.
DC just has like zero marketing budget, it seems like, because I feel like nothing ever gets promoted anywhere at all.
Yeah.
No animated movies, no comic books, no graphic novels. Half the time I mean, literally my job is to read comics, find out a comic is starting because I go to Comixology and look what came out this week.
Right.
A great example is your Gen V. We have Generation Joker, not Gen V. Gen V is that show right now. Generation Joker, your White Knight project, or the current one going. I didn't know existed until you emailed me about it. I think it was issue 2.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I missed issue 1. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
no,
I shouldn't find out that way.
Yeah. We have a marketing team for Zorro, and I told them, like, listen, guys, I've been working with marketing teams in comics my whole career, and I've never been blown away. Like, we're paying you. I don't want you to tell me to go on to Newsarama and CBR. I'm looking for like creative, out of the box thinking here. Yeah. We'll have to see what so I'm happy that they put together videos for the Kickstarter and made some like catchy, like mariachi music playing over pictures of Zorro, stuff that I don't do. We bought basic marketing through ads. So like Bleeding Cool is a site that usually doesn't cover me. If they do, they'll usually include a link to some BS that they think it's ridiculous. Rich Johnson, I don't like him. But I'm advertising on his website now, and he doesn't know it yet. And
he doesn't know it yet
because he just signs on for like, you know, blanket ads, and we're gonna get on Bleeding Cool. Like, I won't do interviews there, but I'll use that and the beat to push my book. You know?
Yeah,
totally.
Like two can play at this game.
Well, let me ask one last question about White Knight, and then we're going to talk about the Zorro Kickstarter. A few people have been asking about it, and yes, we are here to talk about it, but if you don't know how YouTube works, I can't title it Zorro, I got to title it Batman, so.
Yeah, you got to title Batman, that's okay. And the Zorro people know that too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I, for the record, and I'll go more into this, but I am a huge fan of Zorro, and I'm excited for this. But I have one last question, and it goes back to one of the things you said when we started. You said that you got the Robin order wrong. Mm-hmm. Did you decide that, or did the fans decide you got the Robin order wrong? Because you did, and I noticed, and I thought it was a creative choice on your part.
Yeah, me too.
I legitimately screwed up, but I caught it before press, and I decided to let it go.
Okay.
So when you're doing the book, so many plates spinning in my mind. It sounds stupid to think that. How do you forget which Robin's first? I know it's stupid,
right?
But I was thinking about the Robins as a collective, and I forgot that there was an order for a hot second. So I have a scene in the cemetery. Dick is there with Babs. I'm like, well, I got gravestones. Who can I put back there? Like a name. I know, Jason Todd. He was killed. Boom. Right. I did not think at all when when Dick says, oh yeah, that was there before that was there before I got to the Wayne Manor or something. It did not occur to me that I was screwing up the order. Right. So my friend read the book for me, and he caught it, and he's like, that's a bold move, changing the Robin orders. And he's like, I applaud you, sir. People are going to hate that. And I go, what do you mean? And he explained. I'm like, oh shit. And he goes, well, you could just change it with this line of dialogue. And at the time, this is 2017, I thought, f it, just leave it in. It's not really that important. I'm never going to write and draw Batman again. So
yeah,
you know, right. You thought it was to be a one and done kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like a quick Easter egg, and then that was it. And then everyone, as the years went by, more and more Jason Todd fans got on me, and they're like, we're not mad at you yet, but we need context for why this happened.
Right.
So it's been like 7 years of Batman. And oddly enough, the death of Jason Todd as the first Robin has been like the whole crux of like when Harley flipped out on Joker, when the other Harley Quinn stepped in. It's like the whole universe wrapped around this one moment with Jason Todd. It was totally an accident.
Yeah.
So I understand like people who love comics that are getting into comics and want to sort of have my job. And they hear that like, idiot who has his own Batman universe can't be bothered to figure out which Robin is first. Like, I understand why people were annoyed with me. But I had a lot of people who thought it was intentional because, like, well, that explains why Jason is so angry because he was the first one. He's grudgy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I did it.
Yeah.
As a Red Hood fan, I thought it was fully intentional, and I was like, "Oh, what a bold move to make like the first Robin died." Like, cool, I like this change, but he better answer it.
Yeah. And if you think about it, Bruce having lost, so in my universe, Bruce is maybe 10, 15 years older than Jason because Bruce was young when he started. And the fact that Jason got killed, and then 6 months later, Batman starts training Dick. It's like, what are you doing? The first one died, and now you're bringing in a child? Like, that's really questionable.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, when you look at like that legacy, it's like, you know, Batman has a Robin pretty much until he ages out of the costume and then goes, I guess I'll get another one, you know, but there's like, Dick doesn't do anything wrong. He's just like, he just looks terrible in booties. And they're just like, all right, well, you know what? Maybe you should get a plunging neckline. I get it.
Yeah.
And then, but with this one, it's like, no, Batman, like he screws up. The kid dies and he's like, you know, you're going to lose a few. And then tries to make another one. I kind of like that because it's almost like trying to cover over, you know, a mistake and just being like, it's almost like it didn't even happen, you know, because look at how quickly we replaced him.
I had him this monologue with Bruce in the last volume I did, the Beyond the White Knight, and I try to give a good reason for why he does that. And I think I have him say something like, Batman means a lot. It's more than just about me. And it's kind of lonely out here, and it's nice to do this and share it. And the people that are most excited about it are kids.
Right.
And I will like the idea of teaching kids and reaching out and this and that, you know. But he admits probably not a good idea, but who was I to stop you from wanting to do that? You guys were all about this. Who was I to deny you this? So like, you are just as responsible for building this as I am at this point, which I think is like the best way he can rationalize it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
But it was definitely fun. But now let's talk about the big reason you're actually here. I mean, we could talk about Batman all day, but it's not why you're here. We are here to talk about the inspiration for Batman, Zorro. So I'm going to pull up the main cover, not the reveal cover. We do have they've sent us a special reveal of the Adam Hughes cover.
So to build context here for people, I did this campaign called Plot Holes a while back on Kickstarter, and now we're doing everything again, but dialed up to 11. I've got this publisher, Massive, who's helping me with marketing, and we have all these variants that I didn't do before. And I was able to chase down my really talented friends and force them to do variants for me. So I have like a Libramejo variant, Adam Hughes variant. That's mine.
Yeah.
Umberto Ramos. I got Joe Quesada to do a variant. Walt Simonson, there's a bunch I'm forgetting. So for Benny, I thought I'd pick one of the biggest ones we have, which is Adam Hughes, and give Benny the right to exclusively reveal this cover.
All right, here we go. It's going to be here, and it's on the video that we're going to also put on Comic Historian to reveal this. It's going to be where it's going to be located. But there you go. The live stream gets the first view of this cover. Now, fun fact, I appreciate you giving me Adam Hughes, but you didn't know the relationship to it. Adam Hughes is what got my wife into comics.
Oh.
So she was never a comic book person. You know, she generally knew Batman, generally knew Spider-Man, that kind of thing. But of course, I started doing Comic Historian, and I started collecting comic books. She decided to read the Catwoman books based on the fact that Adam Hughes did the covers for it.
Yeah.
So she started collecting all those.
A lot of women love his work. Love it. Like, I know he's like a pinup artist, but women really, my wife loved it too when he was doing Catwoman, and she looked like that famous actress. I forget who it was. But my wife was like hook, line, sinker, loves Adam Hughes art.
Yeah.
I remember first seeing his stuff when he did covers for Zorro back in the 90s, but it was Lady Rawhide. Yeah. So when I got him to agree to do a cover, I was like, do you mind revisiting a Rawhide? Because, you know, you don't have, I know he sort of renders things a lot differently now. But yeah, he showed me this and I was blown away. It's the colors of the Mexican flag. It's got, you know, every series needs a TNA cover, and of course Adam's the best at it. I love the motorcycle. I love the dumb face Zorro is making, like, huh?
So you had no opinion, like you were just like, anything goes. I need an Adam Hughes classic is what
they're doing me a favor. I can't. I mean, I pay their rate, but I'm not going to tell them what to do. As long as they work hard on it. But this one, Libramejo, Mateo's, a few others are like really stood out. Like my friends brought their A game, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I love that you brought Adam Hughes back to Lady Rawhide, because it only just occurred to me that Hughes did those like iconic covers for the Topps comic series back in the day, and I was like, oh, I know who that is. That's amazing.
Yeah. No. So I work with ZPI, who owns Zorro, and I made this deal with them to license Zorro, and I asked them, like, can we do Lady Rawhide? And they sent me all like, yes, we own Lady Rawhide, and you can do a variant. And they're like, here's some artists you might not be aware of. And they show me Adam Hughes. I'm like, yeah, I'm aware of it. So I told them, like, I'm getting Adam Hughes to do a Lady Rawhide, the first Lady Rawhide in 20 years. And I was like, met with crickets, because they're not comic book people. They don't really care. I mean, they do what they don't, you know?
Right. Yeah. They don't remember.
So my first like exposure to Zorro was actually when I was like really young as a kid. My dad and I, because I was homeschooled and I was super young. My parents decided to homeschool.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Where's your purple hair, freak?
We would watch the Batman the '60s show, and wherever I don't know anything about it, but there was like a power hour of Batman the '60s show with classic Zorro shows. And we would watch those. And that was always my experience to Zorro back in the day.
Yeah. Old school, baby.
What drew you to Zorro? Why Zorro is the property you wanted to write about next?
Big fan of swashbuckling, classic pulp heroes. I'm drawn towards like Rocketeer, The Shadow, Dick Tracy, stuff like that. I also loved the Princess Bride when I was a kid, and I dressed up as Dread Pirate Roberts once, and I went to school, and we were like, "Why are you dressed? Are you Zorro?" And I'm like, "Who the f is Zorro?" I had no idea who Zorro was, because I didn't get the Family Channel. Because at the time there was a Zorro TV show happening. I think they had ironically they had Andre the Giant as a character too in that show.
Cool.
And Daniel Craig
in the
as
Zorro
well.
show.
Yeah.
Because I also remember Princess Bride as a kid. My brother loved that one, and we just used to watch that movie on loop. Like, I feel like we had like a very similar childhood, Sean. Like,
we should sword fight next time we're in the bathroom together. No, I'm
inconceivable.
So I you know, in having done my own Batman universe, I thought, you know, I'd love to try licensing. I know Zorro has comics, but like I don't see the kind of comics that I would want to do. And I thought there'd be a way to really boost the brand and try to do a whole bunch of extras that publishers won't do. So I wanted to do a black and white only version. I wanted to do an oversized, a sketchbook and posters and this and that. Because I felt like I could sell Zorro in a way that some publishers can't. And especially because I did all this stuff with Batman, and Zorro is the sort of gave birth to Batman in a lot of ways. It was like sort of doing OG Batman for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you saw the work I did in Curse of the White Knight, all that swashbuckling stuff was just sort of me gearing up to do Zorro one day, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that Curse of the White Knight, the swashbuckling.
Yeah.
You had such good like posing for that. It actually looked like swashbuckling. It didn't just feel like,
oh, thanks.
I'm just gonna give them swords. It's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna draw.
I took a fencing course and learned how to sort of sword fight a little bit, so I could figure out how to lean and where the sword would be, and like the mistake to make it look compelling. And if you look at what Alex Toth did back in the day with Zorro, he understood fencing too, because the moves are generally correct, even though it's just a comic, you know.
Right. Let me pull up the Kickstarter page itself while we go over.
It's just a
preview, isn't it?
Yeah. So we have a holding page right now, but when this airs on Friday, it'll be live and people will be buying stuff left and right, hopefully.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm going to show the holding page just for the sake of that people know where it is. But this page that I'm going to show, when you guys watch this on the actual channel, it's going to have a lot more to it. You got to get on here. We got to back it. We got to get it going.
Have a bunch of different tiers. If you just want the basic pack, you can. If you want the hardcover, if you want the 11x17 artist edition, we'll have sketch covers. I've got Zorro Funkos that I'm sketching too. There'll be limited supplies of some things, so if you want to get it in early, the early bird type thing, you might want to click this. But you know, if you want to buy it from your LCS when it comes out next year, you can do that too. No pressure.
Nice.
Right there. So what can you tell us about the initial story that you want to do? Obviously you're not going to reveal it, but what can you I'm somebody who's doesn't even know who Zorro is. I just love your Batman work. What can I expect getting this first issue?
So the pitch is you know that show Narcos. I wanted to mix Don Quixote meets Narcos. So I thought, what if you had a guy who thought he was Zorro because he was crazy, and he didn't realize that it was not the year 1800, and he just decides to start murdering bad guys who are drug dealers with guns, like machine guns.
Okay.
Right.
And what starts out as a joke turns into a really serious problem for the narcos because this guy is really good at it. I have it set up where it's this kid who is at this Zorro parade in La Vega, which is a fictional city in Mexico, which claims to be the historic birthplace of the real Zorro. So they're aware of the movies and Antonio Banderas and comics, but they're convinced that they are like a tourist destination for the real Zorro 200 years ago. So this kid's dad gets killed, and he has a psychotic break, and he lives up in a chateau for 20 years with this guy who teaches him everything about being Zorro until this guy is murdered, and then he just he snaps and puts on a Zorro suit and just starts murdering people. And for his sister, who hasn't seen him for a long time, for her, she needs to step in and help him because she's a driver for the cartel. So she needs to turn on all her drug dealer friends to save her brother. And she drives an El Camino. And if you know my stuff at all, I got to have a car. So the image that always drove me through the story was, what if off-road 1970s El Camino with a chick on the steering behind the wheel and her brother dressed as Zorro with a whip, like slashing people from the back of the car. As weird as that is, I'm pretty sure there's a way to thread that needle and make something really interesting here.
Yeah. So, I just want this scene. I just want. Yeah, we're gonna get this in there somehow.
I mean, some of the best fictional work comes from having one idea in your head, one visual in your head that you can't get out, and you just want to justify an entire narrative around it. I mean, that's Terminator, isn't it? James Cameron was freaking out from the flu, and he had a dream of like a skeleton climbing out of fire, chasing after him, and he's like, Terminator. And I'm like, oh my god. So El Camino, whipping people out of the back seat.
Weird.
That's great.
I've never done a Western before, and this kind of counts as a Western. But I wanted to have some classic Zorro stuff. Like, you got to have Zorro on a horse. You got to have these things. If you do a modern story, there's still got to be a way to fit both of those in. So, I think I found a way to like give people what they expect about Zorro, but also reinvent him in a way.
No, that's great. I mean, you did a great job reinventing Batman with your side story. I remember when your Batman first came out, and I was like, "This sounds terrible. This is a terrible idea. I'm gonna read one issue and never read this again." And now it's like every time something drops, I want to know what's going on, and that's the exact same thing with the Zorro situation. When you first told me you're like, "I'm doing Zorro," I was like, "Wait, Zorro?"
Yeah. You're not alone.
Not alone.
Yeah. But it makes sense to me. It's iconic. It's like everyone has like a cultural consciousness around it. There's a reason why every time Batman's origin is told, there's a plug for Zorro in it. Because everyone has a context for it. Like, you understand why a little rich kid might put on a cape and a cowl and fight crime jumping off of chandeliers and rooftops.
Yeah.
Because he was watching Zorro. Like, it is that kind of iconic nature that like that you can't buy. You can't buy that kind of like, well, you can, but or at least you can license it. But there's like an element of like everyone knows Zorro, even if they've never like I myself, like I don't think I didn't watch the show. The only Zorro I have context for that I ever really ingested was the Antonio Banderas movies, which are actually pretty good. I gotta admit, I was like,
are they? Because I remember them being good, but I also was really little. So
I remember the first one being really good. I don't recall the second one in any way.
Yeah, first one holds up, I think, is the consensus. I think the first one holds up.
Yeah.
Well, I think because Zorro had been, Zorro comics have always been around, but they've fallen into, no one had paid attention to them for a while.
Right.
So in a way, it gave me a great opportunity to grab a license that was grabbable. You know, it wasn't like people were really fighting over it. And it was just cold enough where I could take it and make it hot again. And it just so happened that I know ZPI is pushing, they just announced the Zorro series last week. They've got a Disney thing in the works. There's another something with Sofia Vergara from Modern Family as Zorro. And it's like a modern day tale. So there's a bunch of stuff on the horizon for Zorro, and I just got lucky with sort of being there first.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome that worked out that way. I don't even know they announced that other show coming out. So
yeah, just a picture or something. It's not the big crazy announcement yet, but it's coming. Yeah,
I assume it's like every other Disney Plus show though, where like you're not following it's just gonna come and go. Like, did you know that National Treasure show actually came out?
I had no idea. Man.
I was going to Disney Plus and I'm like, Wait, I thought we were still just talking about this. Like the whole series is here. What?
Yeah. Yeah. When the new Little Mermaid came out, by the time I hit theaters, I'm like, didn't this come and go already? I feel like I've been
Right?
hearing
Yeah.
people bitch about this for 2 years.
Seriously, yeah.
You
No.
were. Trust me. We were all hearing people bitch about this
Everyone
for
was
like 2
yeah, no.
years.
That happened,
Yeah.
and also the movie came out.
Yeah.
Oh
So-
man, somebody asked what it's like to write Batman and Zorro and how different they are.
Yeah.
Oh man, they're black and white. I mean, there's Batman's brooding. Like I know Batman a lot better than I know Zorro. I mean, Zorro's a sort of, you could see him as a more one-dimensional character. He's written of a time. And Zorro in my book is this kid who is sort of confused and he thinks it's 1800. So he sees a car and he thinks it's like a magic carriage or something. You know, he thinks that guns are muskets. So we can't understand why a musket is firing 50 rounds a second.
Yeah.
You know, so he talks in a very over-the-top Errol Flynn style way, you know. But yeah, so very different than Bruce Wayne, but dresses very similarly, I guess you could say.
Yeah, totally.
When writing Batman, you mentioned earlier in the show right here that there are certain tenets you needed to abide by.
Right.
Do you find it more freeing to write Zorro because you just have that one-dimensional? This is all. He just has to wear a mask and sword fight and ride a horse. Everything else I can do what I want with.
Yeah, I definitely do because Batman's always hot, and if you're going to step up to the plate on Batman, you have to get it right. And if you get it wrong, you're going to hear about it, or worse, you hear nothing because no one cares.
Right.
With Zorro, it's not on a lot of people's radars in the same way, so I feel like it's less stressful because people are open to interpretation, especially with my history with my customers. I've been doing this a while. People follow me through changing Gotham. I think I have a lot of goodwill with my readers, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be okay with whatever I do with Zorro. So I'm very lucky that way, but I do feel less stressed out, you know, because the Zorro people don't make me have a chaperone when I'm here, for example. I can kind of run it my way, hire my own marketing, do distribution. You know, I have my hands on a lot of. It's hard to do this, to coordinate a campaign like this. Like, I thought I was building this hybrid publishing system with Kickstarter and then to Diamond, and I thought this would be a model I could give everybody, but not everyone's going to be able to get Adam Hughes to do a cover. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying, like, there's so many things I had to get good at and struggle to get good at and screw up to get here. And I don't think that what we're doing is for everybody, you know?
Right.
I wish it was. And I'd love to, I'm an open book. You guys know that about me. I'm happy to tell anybody anything you need to know about how we made this work and pulled it off. But I don't think it's repeatable in the same way, unless you're like Mark Millar or somebody who's got resources.
Right.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave this off right here. If you want to back the Zorro book, it's going to be the Kickstarter link will be down below. I had it on the screen. You can see where to go to get there. We're fully supporting it. I'm going to be doing a video that's going to be related why you should be backing Zorro. That's not going to be the name of it, but it's going to be going up on Comic Storian. It's basically support things that aren't Batman if all you're going to do is complain about Batman. That's the short version of what this week's problem with is going to be.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, anyone who backs it, if you're not used to Kickstarter, you click on what you want and 30 days go by, and at the end of 30 days, you can change your order as much as you want in those 30 days. At the end, you're cut off and you're charged, but you don't have to, your money isn't deducted until the end of the month. And then you will get your Zorro products next year, maybe like June, I think. But while you're waiting, the series will actually start coming out at your local comic book shop. But you might have ordered items that your comic shop is not getting. So if you want the special stuff to make your friends jealous, back at Kickstarter. If you just want the book, you could just wait for your comic shop. And if you're a comic shop listening, we'll have tiers for you that'll be discounted. So you can get a bunch of stuff from the Kickstarter, sell it at a profit for yourself. That way you make some money too. I don't want to be seen as adversarial to the LCS experience at all. Like, this is meant to be additive. So I'm trying to be very friendly to whatever shops need to, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. And Benny, when you make that video, I mean, the industry is sort of down 20% right now. You could also frame it as like Sean's trying something new to see if there's a way to, companies aren't, oh man, this would be shit talking Marvel and DC though, but you love doing that.
People love doing that.
Yeah, Sean is frustrated
Have you been on Twitter
with how
lately, Sean?
the big two are. Yeah, so he's going around and doing it his own way to teach these boneheads how to, well, I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
I'll just pull up a script. And this portion of today's show is brought to you by Sean Gordon Murphy. So here we go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, thanks for joining us here today, Sean. We'll let you take off unless you have anything else you want to add to the Kickstarter or Zorro or anything else you want to throw in.
I don't. I'm just excited you guys were able to help me out with this. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Oh, wasn't even a challenge to get Sal here. It was literally like, hey, Sean's gonna be on. You cool with it? That was it. Of
course.
As long as I get you to Jim Lee parties, you will continue to give me plugs.
For those who watched that episode, DC's trolling me. This is the man who got me in.
I don't care.
I still think you set the whole thing up. I think you set the whole thing up to troll me. That was.
Hey Jim, I'm bringing this guy in. I know you're gonna recognize him, but just f with him. Don't tell him. Who he is.
Pretend you don't know who he is.
He'll hate that.
He'll freak out.
Anyway, thanks for being here, Sean. We'll let you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Take care, man.